He's going to talk about driving autonomy and digitization into subsea operations, an area where Britain is already at the forefront. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. My name's Al Fox. I'm the BP Subsea Transformation Manager. I'm going to talk to you about BP Subsea specifically, but I didn't bring the slides that BP has with the Oxford economics numbers that everyone else seems to have brought, so I didn't get the memo. But you know, BP is a global company. The UK is kind of our home, and we do have the really exciting plans out to 2030 that are really significant. So I'm sorry I haven't got those, but you'll hear about the rest of the subsea bit I have got. So basically Subsea is at BP's heart. So we have an operated business and a non-operated business. The operated business is 300 wet trees. We've got 16,000 kilometres of pipelines. So about half of BP's production comes through the wet trees, and 100% of the operated production comes through the pipeline system. You know, we've gone deeper and deeper over the years, and Subsea has enabled us to extend the life of our existing assets and take people out of harm's way, make the business safer and make it more efficient. So this is BP Subsea's new vision that we developed last year. As you can see, it's pretty bold. It nestles into the group vision. So what we were trying to do is to give a nod to the new energy businesses that we're starting to get involved in, and try and push ahead and be ambitious and get to net zero for the subsea business by 2030. If you look at the BP Group strategy, there are two areas that Subsea is most relevant to. So from the new part, the new low carbon businesses, Subsea helps with carbon capture and storage, which we've heard a bit about today. Also, BP's building a really quite significant offshore wind business. Obviously, there's big underwater elements to that. And then we've got some new kind of interesting, which I'm going to talk about at the end, adjacent businesses. So one of the things we're looking at getting involved in is to put subsea data centres and co-locate them with the wind business. For the resilient hydrocarbon business, that obviously is ongoing, and we're trying to continue to transform that, make that more efficient and make it safer and more reliable. So I want to say something about how we got to the kind of the strategy. So initially I got the leadership for last year to come together and to develop like a kind of using Mural, which is an app some of you might have used when you're doing transformation. I see a few people nodding. I got to kind of build out all the cards to make like the table of contents for the strategy. It was kind of going to be like a 10-page document. And that took kind of 3 goes at doing that. And by the time we got to the end of that, when it came to actually starting to write the document, the leadership decided they didn't want to do it after all, and they did something quite brave and bold. So we turned it over to the organisation itself. So there's about 500 people that work in the complete subsea business. And we took a diverse team of 10, and we got right down to people who are essentially on the tools and got them to write the strategy. And that took about a week. And then we turned over to the whole 500 people to comment on it, but we didn't like give them a PDF. We gave them like the Word document, which you can do in like Microsoft, so anyone could edit it. And so kind of like a Wikipedia page, the strategy kind of got better with all these ideas that were coming in from the edge. There were about 100 comments that needed someone to look at, so I reconvened then the 10 people who wrote the document in the first place for an afternoon, and we kind of sorted all the comments out, and we go back to the leadership. They looked at it for a little bit, not very long, and then we just published it. So something that would normally take a really long time in a big company like BP, not only was done really quick, but there were 10 advocates that went back in the business that felt they had a real stake in it. Plus everyone that had any interest in whatsoever could just edit it, right, and do something interesting. So I wanted to share with you the transformation model that I've been developing over the last decade or so, because I kind of got interested in why sometimes transformations work and why sometimes they just completely fall apart. So normally we start in the bottom left with technology. And I'm sure everyone in the room has tried to introduce a technology at some point which has then failed. And normally it's because some of these other levers we can pull on weren't like pulled on at the time. So ways of working, we did a lot of work on that. And if you can automate or lean out some processes, you normally get like a benefit and things can go a bit quicker. I know the defence industry is really good at outcome-based contracting because we've tried for a long time to learn it from you. We're finally getting somewhere with it, but we're trying to make our contracts a bit more innovative and focus on the things we want rather than the inputs that go into them. There's a lot of talk today about people, and obviously we've got the people we've got, and we're bringing new people in, but as these new technologies come through, then we need to either help the people we've got get better at using them or kind of keep bringing new people in that's more confident with them. If you do a really good job at transformation, it will probably change your business model, which then leads to kind of new interesting things to happen. I could have written ecosystem around the whole thing, but as I keep hearing collaboration, and it's a real joy to hear that because I've been preaching that for an awfully long time inside the company, but a lot of the time interesting ideas come from the outside anyway. It's always really hard to work with a big company. You've got to have someone on the inside who's pulling. There's so many hoops to jump through, but when you get something to go, really interesting, exciting stuff can happen. I thought I'd just talk about two quick examples. One of a subsea transformation which was successful a couple of years ago. I think quite a few people in the room know Peter Collinson, so he was one of the guys that did this with me. We were spending about $150 million a year on subsea inspection across the whole business in 2015. We looked to see if we could pull in some new technology that would take that down. Once we started getting going, it was quite obvious that we were doing inspections we didn't really need. And there's a sort of initial thought, you think, well, that's okay, right? Because we're just learning more about the system. But if the data is useless, we're not only wasting resources, we're also putting people in harm's way to collect data we're not going to use. So as you kind of went through the transformation model I showed before, about a third of the money we saved was about applying new technologies like fast digital inspection or uncrewed vessels or AUVs, ROV, electric ROVs, all these kind of new technologies. About a third of it was changing how we work, so doing data processing a different way or changing how we did risk-based inspection, and then to take account of the monitoring that we had. So there are sensors we've got in the system. Sometimes they're better at telling us the condition of the kit than an inspection looking from the outside. And then they did some interesting innovations around contracting. So one of my colleagues got this tiny little Irish company called X-Ocean to go to Azerbaijan to go and inspect the really shallow pipelines. And it's a little boat that you can take on the back of a trailer with a car, and it's now become the standard way we do it. And it was done fixed price. It was way cheaper than any other way of doing it. It got them a jump. They're now grown, and we've got the data we wanted in a really efficient way. So basically, we saved money, and that's sustained and gone forward into the future. We did get the first verified sustained emissions reduction for Subsea. We also took a lot of people out of harm's way, which made it safer. I didn't have room on my slide to add. It also changed the culture of how BP Subsea works. So at the time, the regions and the centre weren't that close together, but through this project over these couple of years, we got everyone to kind of line up, and that really helped. And when you know what your pole star is, or the North Star that your organisation is trying to work towards, then people are able to align their efforts up behind it. So this is one of my new projects. So this is my really simple picture. So essentially, we're starting to build offshore wind, and most of the power will get sent onto the grid to people onshore to use. But there's an opportunity to send some of it to new subsea data centres. The reason why we want to put the data centre underwater is it helps the data centre use a lot less power because you're moving to passive cooling. Also, the grid's constrained, as we all know, because it tends to take time to build it out to accept the amount of offshore wind that's going to get built. And it also helps with planning permission, because a bit like onshore wind to offshore wind a decade ago or so, it's getting more difficult to find sites to build data centres. So it also helped the economics of the offshore wind farms, because those customers who are behind the meter, they can share the lack of grid charges for that part of the electricity. We haven't built one yet, but we're seeing if we could make this concept work as we start to build out our different projects. That's it. That's my LinkedIn profile. If you've got any interesting ideas, or you're looking for a way to kind of get into BP and try and connect up to the right bit with trying to get through all the kind of layers to find the right opportunities. Thank you.